Hello, and welcome to my cellar. Number 144. Ooh, that's a gross, or that's gross. In any event, it's what it is. Got a lot of little quick things to talk about on this episode, so I'll get going right away. I remember a few encounters with the dreaded bulette. Seemed we always cleared out in a hurry. I'd say that was a very good thing to do, because unless you're very high-powered or expecting them, bulette was not supposed to be a wimp. It was also created to eat ponies, because the game was being overrun by dwarven ponies who could supposedly see underground. Eat them. Do you have any tricks for editing your own writing? Supplemental question, do you have any trouble editing your own writing? Well, there's an old axiom in editing and proofreading, because proofreading is a huge part of editing. If you don't see it the first time, you're very unlikely to see it on the second read, and it won't happen on the third because of the brain's curious ability to fill in what it's supposed to be. So when you miss it the first time, it's very hard to find it the second time. That's why I pay attention to spell check. And when I'm writing a piece for somebody, I have a friend that I send it to and say, hey, give me a read on this, will you? And if he finds an awkward bit or something, he lets me know, and I buff it or polish it or whatever. I do the same for a couple of my friends. I don't think anybody can accurately edit their own stuff. It's a curious thing, again, of the human brain, that we fill in the blanks automatically. So if we forgot something, we don't remember it again necessarily on the second or third pass. Do I have a problem with it? Yeah, I do. I think every writer does. I think that's why every writer has a friend, a trusted friend, whose opinion they respect. And I have less trouble editing my own now because I've had so many years to learn how to write better. But yeah, I still send anything of any significance. I still send to my friend Jim, and have him, Jim Wampler, and I have him read it, and I do the same for him. And I also edit some of his magazines and stuff. By the way, Scientific Barbarian #1 went off to the printers today. So, those of you who subscribed, it's looking good. And Jim's always on time, and doesn't look like this will be any different. This one thanked me for the extra helpings last time. Hope I had a cool down period. I did. This is an interesting question. I want to make sure I think I understand it. Are boulettes affected by handedness, left or right-handed, ambidextrous when moving so fast? How do boulettes negotiate the tight spaces of dungeons moving at such high speeds? Is it possible for a boulette to bean itself on a corner wall? Well, in my world, boulettes don't dig into dungeons. Not full-grown ones. Young ones might, looking for, as a predator, they might. But I wouldn't have a big one do it, because, no, they don't fit that well. Full-grown one doesn't fit that well any more than you'd have a full-grown dragon trying to cram itself into something like that. Granted, dragons are much bigger, but the same principle applies. Are they left or right-handed? No, I don't. I don't think so. Are tigers left or right-handed? I don't know. Has anybody ever done a study? So I wouldn't have them. I wouldn't have them in a dungeon, simply because it would be impractical. We're dealing with fantasy, but that verisimilitude is necessary. and I wouldn't have it. I much prefer them outdoors or on the edge of a ruin, not in it, but perhaps denning on an edge in a ruined castle and the dungeons underneath or whatever. And they could be guarding the property, so to speak. On a sad note, one of the pioneers of Dungeons and Dragons, one of Gary's oldest friends from Chicago originally, Leonard Lakofka, we knew him as Lenny. Lenny Lakofka died today. Lenny played D&D from the 70s. Lenny sent stuff in that I published in the early Dragons. Lenny had input in some of the early supplements. Truly one of the originals in the Pantheon, or the Pantheon, that's a little hubris, in the lineup of the original D&D partners. Rest in peace, Lenny. Yeah, I know. Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman filed a lawsuit against Wizards for canceling their new Dragonlance series. I don't know the details of the contract. I don't know the details of the suit exactly. What I've heard gives me great joy, because I think they'll be able to stick it to the Wizards for what they did. Anytime can anybody stick it to the Wizards, I'm right there. Consistency of spells. You've said that magic items contain magic mana integrally or physically. Does this mean fireballs in the fireball spells become like a magic item for the duration of their existence, or are they a special case? Fireballs are a form of energy, thermal, just as lightning bolts are a form of energy, electrical. A fireball is generated and created and assumes form through the casting of the spell. It goes and does its thing. It hits its target, or it misses and flies on until it runs out of distance, or it hits something else, etc. Yeah, they are their own magic. If it's a flat-out spell or scroll, which is basically just, hey, reading it instead of having to memorize it, they are the product of the conjuration or the abjuration or whatever, whichever ation you call it. A wand is a reservoir, and if it has charges, it has that many locked in there, ready to be released. Now, there's another question that comes up that sort of touches on this also a little later. No, they're not. A fireball is a fireball is a fireball. How it was, I mean, it's all magic. Is it a magical item? Not in the sense of the word item that I think you're going for, like a wand or a stave, or a staff, or a ring. I don't believe that's in the same category. Pardon me. Got to keep the throat lubricated. Okay, now, the same person sent him Consistency of Spells, version 2. Does a fireball spell reduce or burn up mana from the total pool of mana, rather than, say, borrowing the magical energy from mana and then somehow returning it? Inspired by the Can You Retrieve Magic Missles question. No, you can't retrieve them. I believe I said that. No, it doesn't. In my world, with its high and low mana and everything else being normal, if you played that way that I do, I guess you could make a case for a really big spell in a low mana area, depleting it. But what I use, my concept is, I don't know if you read the stuff with ley lines, tapping in sort of druidically to the earth, to the mana, to the energy flowing. being low mana would just mean a spell wasn't quite as effective. Being high is like being in an area that's really charged with static or filled with volatile fumes, if you will. Think of it more along those lines, and that's how my concept works. And it's always a surprise when you get a high mana area. One time in one of my games, somebody tried. There were 8 or 9 orcs or goblins. It was relatively not overpoweringly threatening group, but and they tried to charm however many or whatever, and they got them all. And so they knew something was up. It's your world. I can tell you how I play it in mine. I don't see mana as a big gas tank, with the ding 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 the level going down. It's just like being look at it this way. Look at oxygen down at sea level, below sea level. It's very plentiful. And on the top of the mountains, it's not. So look at the oxygen that way. Where most of us live, it's fine. But if you get below sea level or down at sea level in high humidity, etc., the same principle kind of applies. Sort of. So, it's all magic. It's all fantasy. It's not real. That's what we have to remember. All right. Referring to the spell Magic Missile, are the missiles physical like arrows or magical flashes of light energy? The reason I'm asking, can you retrieve them after the battle? No, you can't. We always felt that the Magic Missile was a bolt, a wad of energy. Not a projectile as such, not a physical projectile, not like a sling bolt or a sling stone or a sling bullet or something like that. So think of a Roman candle amped up several thousand times, if that helps. Poof, poof, and they burn themselves out or they impact and make damage. No, you can't get them back. For one thing, in the version that I won the argument on for way back when, Magic Missile always hits. So there's nothing to retrieve. Now, if you're playing that Mortar Barrage version of the Magic Missile, don't care. They didn't hit, but they still impacted the ground somewhere and dissipated, pardon me, their energy. Now, here's an interesting one. Well, they're all interesting. This is a different one. Does magical healing leave scars? Well, I guess that's kind of like how you want to play it. Now, if you went to a very high level cleric for healing, 10, 12, 14th level, something like that, I would think that they would be so proficient as to not leave scars. The hedge wizard, on the other hand, who you get to do it for 3 chickens and 5 silver pieces, he can heal you up and stop you from bleeding and knit your skin together, but maybe not as neatly as someone more proficient. It's not anything I really thought about until this week. Actually, if I'm honest, until a few hours ago. Somebody else asked, there's another one. All right, this guy said in a 3-parter, so I'll read the rest of it. I admit I never thought about that. It's an interesting concept. Now he's just ran into the assumption that magic heals all without scars. But now that you bring it up, I guess you can determine with a roll or by the level of the spell and or the experience of the magic you do. Yeah, it's kind of the way I do it. Handle scars. Now, one of my players would have opposed to me implementing a few of these ideas. One more idea. Does scar tissue reduce dexterity? Oh, absolutely. And that's why the whole idea of scars is anathema to the original concept of hit points. Hit points were the ability to avoid a fatal blow. Now, it didn't really matter if you had 10 hit points left and you got hit for 14, or you had 1 hit point left and you got hit with 1. 0 was 0. I didn't go into negatives. 0 was 0, you're dead. Never got into the negative thing. I know Gary dabbled with that later, but I thought it was needless and just needless complication. But implying that you're healing something up that leaves scar tissue, and there, if you play that it leaves scar tissue, yes, certainly dexterity would be affected, just like being muscle bound. You know, the guy on the beach that, let's see, wrong arm. My right shoulder's still all screwed up. I got to move here and show you what I'm talking about. The guy, the muscle builder of Muscle Beach in Southern California go, which way to the hot dog stand? And they go, that way. Because they're so muscle bound, they can't go that way. Anyway, that's the general gist of it. So there again, it's how the foundations of your campaign work. Interesting conversation about critical hits, and then this kind of ties in. The group that the individual was talking about loved the idea of critical hits. Oh boy, until they realized that the monsters can make critical hits. Now, if a critical hit just is like double damage or something like that, that's fine. If you play that a critical hit lopped off your leg or, severed your hand or something like that, okay, that's your game, and you've got to figure out your corpsman requirements to be a corpsman in your game. Again, I can tell you how I would play it, but I'm not going to tell you how you should play it. I treat hit points very amorphously. I don't do critical hits, hit location. No, I say that 95% of the time, no. Now, the obvious exception would be if you had some great big sword-like scythe coming out of the wall at waist height and it hit them for a 20. Well, yeah, they probably just got whacked in half. But in my world, what really is they couldn't avoid enough, and they're dead. Dead's dead. How many pieces you're in may or may not have any bearing on being dead, or how dead you are. Let's see, what else? How can a DM handle important sounds being heard out in the wilderness? For example, if players are passing by a section on the hex map where a strange noise may be heard to grab their attention, can I simply tell the players, you hear a strange noise off in the distance, when they're close, or should I stop and do a die roll to determine if they've been hear anything at all? I know D&D 5e, yeah, handles it with a die roll. Well, that ought to be a good reason to do it a different way. But I've never used a die roll, and a player called me on it. Well, that player likes to play 5e, fine. I've never used a die roll either. If I was doing an outdoor adventure at various times where it would be appropriate, particularly at night if they're camping, I would say that as you settle down, the night noises begin. Off in the distance, you hear a lion roar. In the trees, you hear the monkeys and the birds settling down, and there's some other noise that you're not quite sure what it is, but it's not causing everything else to be quiet. That's one way to do it. Now, why doesn't it cause it to be quiet? Well, maybe it doesn't prey on them, so they don't worry about it. Maybe they're not, maybe they're not afraid of it. Maybe they're unaware of it. Lots of reasons. But yeah, you can use noises. Certainly, we've all used noises in the dungeons. You hear a steady drip, drip, drip coming off in the distance. And so, of course, everybody goes off to see if they found a busted magic fountain or, oil dripping out of the ceiling so they can fill up all their oil bottle, whatever. Sound can definitely be used as part of the adventure. You can set the ambiance. Now, to go to that extreme, there was a guy that used to come to TotalCon back in the day, and he did one of the mystery RPGs, and he brought in professional lighting and sound effects and the whole 9 yards, because that's what he did. And it was astonishing. It was eerie to sit in there and listen to the crickets and, carrying on in that. Can a human being do that? I don't think so, not without a big soundboard. But there's certainly, you can have fun with it. You can hear an unknown sound over this way, and then you can hear an unknown sound over that way, like its mate is calling to it, and there's two things converging on you. Lots of ways you could do with that. As for the die roll, or just telling, having one person, no, I would simply make a general description of the ambiance of the situation and let one of the party members, or not, pick up on the clue. One of the party members should be asking, well, what do I hear? And after you've said general nighttime noises, well, you hear the cloud of big birds over in this tree settling down for the night. You heard the 4,600 bats come out of the cave. There's lots of things you can describe as a sound that are legit, and the more you use those, the better you can justify, well, no, you didn't hear it sneaking up on you because of all the other noise. If you don't describe noise, they can probably assume that there isn't any, which should be a tip-off anyway, because anybody that's camped at night, once the campground quiets down, the night noises come out. Let's see. You could just make one player roll to hear the noise, and everyone else hears it automatically, while their PC is saying, what noise? I rolled a 1, and now I have my elbow in my ear. If he wants to roll so bad, let him roll. Well, that's fine if he wants to. Some people just gotta use those dice. I'm gonna write an upcoming article for the second edition of Scientific Barbarian about the effect dice has on common sense. Do I agree with this statement? All right, here we go. Alignment is a tool for enforcing role play. And, all right, another question, why is alignment a tool for enforcing role playing? Supplemental question, how did the need to enforce role playing in the way that the alignment tool allows come about? Okay, I've given this example before. The bunch of ex-cons that I played with the guy that wanted to have a paladin gouging out orcs' eyeballs to get them to talk. You can't do that. The more I looked at this chart last week, the more upset I got by it. When I read I think that whoever wrote this chart up originally, and I've seen it many, many times, whoever wrote this up really took it to an extreme. Under chaotic evil, act for your own freedom while assuring others never have it. Screw the establishment, screw other people, just burn it all down. Well, okay, that seems a bit extreme. It sounds like you're more of a nihilist or an anarchist than chaotic evil. The lawful evil that I read last week about oppress others and that. Alignment was supposed to be kind of like the measure of the stain on your soul. If you've been acting according to the general principles of your alignment, you had a pretty white soul. If you hadn't been, you had some gray or darker smudges on there. Now, when would that come into effect? Well, if you had been pretending to be a good person and came across an artifact that was aligned to good, and the wizard in the party said, "Oh yeah, it's cool, it's good," and you went to pick it up and got zapped for 8 hit points, that might tell you that your soul or whatever I'm not trying to follow your ka, the essence that is you, is a little stained and needs a little cleaning up, or it needs to be reassessed and reassigned. A supposedly good fighter who got all chewed up and had to go to town to find a healer, when going to find a good cleric to heal him, the cleric might read his aura, so to speak, and go, "Nah, I don't think I'd rather not. You're not a very nice guy. I don't think we need to transact anything together." It was also a means of pushing people to make a decision based on their, one of the great moral conundrums was, if I'm lawful good, can I just murder baby orcs? I'm lawful good, but everybody knows baby orcs will grow up to be big orcs, and big orcs are nasty. Now, I'm not talking about this recently woke shit. I'm talking about the old school play, where orcs are bad guys through and through. Yeah, in a way, it was a way of behave yourself. I absolutely forbade the paladin from doing that by threatening him with a 27 hit point fireball, or a lightning bolt rather, or 27 hit die. I told him I was going to roll 27 8-siders. He figured he wasn't going to survive that, no matter how badly I rolled. So it is a rule. It is a way of enforcing role playing, and it can just simply be that the player decides to go, "Okay, I'm not good anymore. I'm going to be neutral from now on." If they have a patron deity, I'm not talking about clerics here, but if in your campaign you get into this type of thing, you have multiple even if you just have one big pantheon with multiple members, or multiple pantheons, whichever one they've aligned themselves to, the one that they hope will help them if they need it, the one whose temples they've donated to over the years, the one whose mendicant monks you have thrown coppers and silvers into their begging bowls. That was why you stayed close to your alignment, so you had some goodwill built up. Okay, now here's the same person going on about alignment after they kind of rewrote the thing. What was an alignment a tool for? Last episode you said alignment was originally to help the DM see how their players were playing, whether following their own espoused beliefs. True. It shouldn't be a club in the DM's hand, but it certainly can be, and they can certainly earn it to be a club. Was alignment a mechanic in the game directing DMs to chastise players who slipped out of character? Yeah. XP reduction. If they did something heinous, you don't reward them with more XP till they wash their souls with those stains, their ids, their egos, their ka, whatever, until they wash those stains off their souls. Yeah, maybe things just don't go all that way for them. Could be. Does going off alignment have a hard and fast effect, or is it a floating prompt for DMs to insert problems against PCs acting out of it? What was the final goal? Well, there was no final goal of alignment. It wasn't a club. It was a guideline, and it was an indicator, and it was the word I'm seeking for. It was a good reason to do what you did, If they did something wonderfully selfless and they were good, well, you bump them. And if they did something borderline heinous and they say they're good, well, then you deduct them. And when they go, hey, how come I only got this many points? You can let them know that your soul stinks a little. Needs a cleansing. I've always viewed alignments as a tool to help players roleplay. We really got into something with alignment. If roleplaying as a paladin, you would know stealing, senseless violence, lying, and generally being a terrible person really weren't how you were supposed to play. As far as punishment, as a DM, I'd only dish out a punishment if a player kept playing outside of his role's alignment. If one or two small bad decisions were made, it may go unnoticed. But if they start stacking up or stop being small, little role play errors, then I'll have to set them back on the right track. But that's how I see it. Great. I see no reason, I see no fault, rather, with that philosophy. And on we go about alignment some more. So alignment is essentially a mechanism to gauge how well role-playing is being done. That's a good way to look at it. If you espouse being a lawful, good, whatever, then yeah, how well are you adhering to that? And that can easily be a multiplier when it comes to awarding XP. Now, not times 3 or times 4, but maybe, extra 30% for exceptional adherence to your alignments or doing something, above and beyond, whatever. Again, it's up to the DM. How do you feel, how much importance do you put on alignment? I don't use alignment at all anymore in conventions. I learned the hard way. Don't give them an alignment because they'll take it to an extreme. Now, I never put any evils in, but I did put in a lot of neutrals back in the day. And in my big set of pre-gens, the high-level ones, there's a couple, 3 thieves. Well, they just started stealing. They took that as a license to steal, literally ripping off their players, their group. Just blame my alignment, just blame my alignment. Well, when I kept that box blank, they played differently. You might want to look at that. Now they're called rogues. Or if you don't know how to spell rouge, boy, am I getting tired of seeing that. Okay, more on the alignment. Is the alignment rule comparable to rules such as strength limits for weapons? For example, a hobbit physically can't duel with a two-handed long sword. Or is it less important? It's less important. Hobbits can't pick up swords, physics, whatever. It's less important because it's open for every DM to adjudicate and assess, and how much do they want alignment to be an influence in their game. Now, those ex-con buddies in their regular game, they were all evil sons of guns, and they just, they ran through the country hacking and slashing, and they had fun, Who am I to judge? Okay, you said in the past, one way of dealing with PCs not staying true to alignment is to change it accordingly. Bad for clerics and paladins, maybe, but is it a problem for other classes? Well, going back to what I had said earlier about if you had a deity, and I know there's a lot of campaigns that get into this level of detail. If there's a certain cudgel, Kugel the Clever, or whatever, certain deity that you make a point of being nice to their wandering mendicants, you make a point of donating to their temples, you make a point of going to those temples for healing, yeah, you've got a reasonable assumption that you've got an in with that deity. It's a reasonable assumption. But when you stray and you quit making the donations, and well, you don't have a better than average chance of getting some help. That you can use it as a tool that way. Okay, I'm tired of talking about alignment. Let's talk about books. Every now and again, 10-speed press Division of Random House, or no, Penguin, sends me some new gaming stuff. And I got 2 this past week. One of them's really cool, and the other one well, we'll start with the other one. All right, it's hard to read all the print. The World of Critical Role. The history behind the epic fantasy. Physically, it's a very pretty book. Seems to be very well made. Full of many color pictures. Full of much stuff. Been recently brought to my attention that AP, actual play, is a big deal. That I've been aware of this critical role thing, and I've never understood why anybody would want to sit on their butts and watch somebody else role play when they could be doing it themselves. I understand these are all character actors and voice actors. Well, okay. Again, I've not watched one. Don't care to. Have no interest in it. But if you're into that, then I imagine you're going to like this a lot. It's kind of like a TLC and some other manufactured drama program, expose thingy. It's very pretty. And if you're into this, if you follow Critical Role, I'm sure you'll like this book. I'm not one of them because I'm not into Critical Role. I would never watch other people role play. I'd do it myself. Now the other book, on the other hand, is really cool. I know 2 of the authors, John Peterson and Michael Whitmer. And it's called The Hero's Feast, Dungeons and Dragons. It's the official D&D cookbook. Now I know that's kind of a snicker, and it's okay, snicker. It's got some great recipes in here. Now I pride myself, I'm a pretty good cook. You can ask anybody that's eaten at my house when I've cooked. I started learning cooking early in restaurants when I was still a teenager. So I have a pretty good background. And I tell you what, I'm going to try several of these recipes because they just look really good. Now the contents are broken up into human cuisine, elven cuisine, dwarven cuisine, halfling cuisine, and uncommon cuisine. And then elixirs and ales. It's got an afterward. It's got incredible photography. Some of these recipes, and I'm not going to name which ones I think are because that'll just give you, oh, he's weird, he eats that. Several of these recipes look really, really tasty. Let's see, I think there's an index in here somewhere about all these things. They've got a couple of alcoholic drinks. I'm not a big alcohol drinker, but a couple of these look mighty fine. There's elven whey bread, and there's iron rations, which don't look very iron to me, but it's a cute name for the meal. Barovian butterscotch pudding, everything soup. They have some clever menus in here. They have black pudding, smoked sausages and kraut with dwarven mustard, moonshay, seafood rice. I mean, there's a lot of really neat stuff in here. I think this would make a really interesting Christmas present for somebody you know that likes to cook, that plays D&D, because it's a natural tie-in. Let's see. Okay. I know a young artist who's really, really quite talented, and she's rather young for as talented as she is, named Raven Evermore. And Raven's got only 1 week left on her second Kickstarter. Her first one funded just fine, but she's having a little trouble with this, and I want to turn you on to what she's doing. She's doing these little critter keychain things. It's $6 at the lowest level to buy in. It's a great stocking stuffer. With Christmas coming up and everything, or a Hanukkah gift on one of the nights, whatever. Because it's go check it out. I'm going to show you the link. Try to get it focused. I'm going to read it to you after I put on my glasses so I can read it to you and look even more like Jim Wampler. There's disturbing rumors going around. It's https://kickstarter.com projects /Laroa LAROA /floofy FLOOFY familiars spelled the normal way reference REF equal profile spelled out space created. Check it out, or look for if you go to if that was Kickstarter.com projects Laroa floofy familiars ref profile created. And if that was too fast, then I apologize. Go to Kickstarter and look up Raven Evermore. She's the daughter of a good friend of mine who's also a good artist, and I'd like to see her succeed and keep going. You may have seen a piece of her art on Facebook, those who this past week. It was some sort of female fawn. She had some kind of horns on the side of her head, and her eyes were blindfolded. And when it's quite well done, and it's adult in that the fawn's nearly naked. And as a dad myself, I thought, ooh, I wonder what Dad thought when he saw that. But she's really quite good, and I'd like to see her Kickstarter fund. She's just a really sweet person. I already told you the Scientific Barbarian is off to the printers. Okay, now, those of you that read fantasy or that play fantasy role-playing games, there's an author that I only recently discovered, like within the past year, that if you're not reading him, you're missing out. His name is Kevin Hearne, Hearne, and he has a series called the Iron Druid Chronicles. I mean to tell you, that is wonderful, light, fun reading. I mean, there's places in there where I'll laugh out loud. He's a very talented author. The Iron Druid, this guy knows his every mythology there is. And he has a trio of books, 2 of which are out, the third one's coming, called The Seven Kennings, Kennings. I've read the first 2, and they are marvelous. Just marvelous. This guy can write, and he knows his fantasy. It's great. The Iron Druid. This guy's 2,000 years old. I highly, highly recommend them. And now, I have a game tomorrow. I believe it's at 7 o'clock Central Time. It's at TableTop Events. It says 2 of 9 have signed up. Well, it's only supposed to be 8. And so that means there's 6 spots left. It's at TableTop Events, not NTRPG like I told you last week. Dummy. I don't believe it costs anything to sign up. If you want to play in a Wheel of Blame, sign up and we'll meet tomorrow night. Frankly, I don't know if only 2 people signed up. I may just have a bullshit session with them for 2 hours because the game really needs at least 4 or 5 players. With 8, it's great. Hey, I rhymed. Let's see, what else is going on? I think I made it through the 4 pages. Yeah, I did. Again, my condolences to the Lakofka family. I've known Lenny. Well, let's see. I met him in 75. So I knew him for 65, 75, 25, 45 years. I'm not that old. And I always enjoyed sparring with him. And yeah, he had a mean left hook. I enjoyed many of his ideas. And he always had his input was always worth reading. And I don't know that I can give a higher compliment. My wife and I have decided that we're going to kind of go back into our shells. I'm living in Ohio, which is this close from going purple, which is the worst it can be. We're having record cases, record hospitalizations again, because we have so many dumb fuck assholes that won't follow the, wear a mask, don't mob up in a group. We just have too many dumbasses in this state. Probably because we have so many Trumpers in this state. But my wife and I went out yesterday on a Thursday, did our weekly shopping early, and we're going to hunker down again. We'll have some of our family in on Sunday, but we're not going out. We're not having other non-family members in. We're just going to kind of shelter in place again, because it's getting really shitty here in Ohio. So please, wear a mask. If you don't do it for yourself, do it for me. Do it for the neighbor. Do it for the other guy in line with you. Wash your hands. Sneeze into your elbow if you're not wearing a mask, even if you are. And take care of yourselves. Dodata Govi. Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic Missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. DSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree.
High as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.